welcome to the show, Living with Climate Change. This show is the second part of the show on climate change and eco-spiritualism. If you haven't seen part one, I suggest please go watch that. Maybe help you understand this show a little more. But if not, welcome. So again, we are talking about how to live with climate change, how to cope with the uncertainty and the fearful projections of the future for our planet and our species and all the other species. And we hear nothing but bad news. There is good news, and I'm going to present some good news in future shows. But today, let's continue on with our using spiritual principles in our daily lives to relieve eco-trauma, climate trauma, and these unpleasant feelings that we're having just from our own development of growing and thriving as human beings is seeming to going to lead to our demise. In a way, we are a victim of our own success. That's kind of how I see it. Anyway, now I talked about the Tao Te Ching and A Course in Miracles and some other things in the last show, if you're interested. Now, especially in climate change, let's look at the way people are dealing, the division on this topic of people, and I think we can see that it's based on the human ego. I think it partly enough that we should address this. Now, what do I mean by the human ego? Now, it's kind of a general term, but I'm thinking of it in a way that, in not a good way, the part of our human mind that is an unpleasant entity, I would call it, I guess. The human ego, and it's throughout time, it's been thought of, it can be seen as the devil or something that's evil or disease or a witch or all, these things that I think that you can trace it, and that's kind of how it's been thought of in the past. But let's just say that it is the conditioned mind, and it's just everybody has an ego, you've heard that, and some are bigger than others. I don't really mean personality. I mean, it's the way that we see ourselves, and we don't want that to be found out. Maybe one way of, I'm not sure that's, no. Well, let's just look at it in politics or, the human ego, it's always trying to be part of something. It's trying to separate, be separate. I guess the extreme would be somebody that just wanted to be alone all the time and isolated. And that's my opinion. That's my experience with. I think that, and that is that's something that we don't want. It's not fun. But it can be so the human ego will do this in sneaky ways. And so let's just, if you have no ego, and I think that you are in a very pleasant place, maybe just like a puppy dog or something. And if you see, when we see people that we don't think are very egoic kind of people, we're attracted to them. But it's your own worst enemy. I think you know what I mean. And so this is always something we're trying to fight. Not fight, but we're trying to deal with our own egos. If you're a conscious person and you're trying to better yourself and become a better human being and evolve. Some people are so lost in their ego, they have no idea. And you can't reach them. So that's another problem. But the ego wants to be separated, so it wants to be, and a person with a big ego could be homeless, or they could be president, of the United States. It doesn't matter. And you could be very shy and have an ego, a big ego that is unpleasant to live with. So anyway, you can see this in CNN and Fox News, the Democrats, the Republicans, and nationalism and racism. And I think that's part of why people cling to these ideas, and they're not willing to admit they're wrong, or they don't bend, and they will not. And I think we're seeing it in the world much more. I don't know how anyone can watch, or anyone, I'm just that way. I've always been kind of an independent thinking person, that I'm always looking at all sides of things. But so relating this to climate change, it's not going to be helpful in this dire predicament that we're in. We are sharing a global atmosphere and world that is not separated. Pollution that is let out in one country travels to another and is in their food. And when CO2 goes into the atmosphere, it's all in one thing. So that's why I'm mentioning this, and we need to be aware of it. Now, so in climate change, let's say a scientist has so we have people accusing scientists of this, of maybe, so they are locked into this belief in climate change, so their data can't be trusted, and because they want it to be this way. Now, it's a big world. There's many scientists, and there are outliers, right? The bell curve, and there's in everything. So there could be, I'm not saying that scientists are doing that. I'm saying that some might be doing that in some way and not even know it. But just to my opinion, and I've been around scientists, that they're very ethical people, and they're least likely to be doing this. And I don't think they're not egoic people that would lie, Now, but I think overall it can be trusted. But that's another point. So that's the ego, and we need to be aware of it. I just wanted to state that it has something to do with spirituality, of course. Let me change the topic a little bit, and let's look at another kind of following up on the last show. Let's look at another spiritual practice that a lot of people use that is called meditation. And I don't do this in the traditional sense. I've tried it before and I don't find it, it's not for me. I can meditate just, sitting in a room, quiet, and looking out the window or something. And I'm not criticizing that type of meditation, but I think we should try to live in a meditative state all the time. But it's interesting. I like Alan Watts a lot, and his explanation of it, if you can find it, is wonderful. But he states that meditation is for us to know what reality is, and that because human beings, we get confused of what is reality. So I think this is a very important concept that is relating to our issue. Now, how do we confuse the real world with illusion? Well, the real world is one thing, and then human beings have created what he calls a system of symbols, language and mathematics and all these things that are supposed to represent what is real. And of course, we need these just for a practical basis to use for a structured civilization. Understandable. But as he is saying, is that we forget what is reality. And what is reality? And that's what you find in a deep, that's why people meditate, to empty their minds. And I guess really what it is what reality is the present moment. What is happening in the exact moment, that is all there is. That is reality. There is nothing else. So just whatever your sense perceptions, that's why you hear this gong, and they'll use incense, so you start using your sense perceptions to understand what is reality. And because, as people get so busy in their lives, they are never in the moment. They're always thinking of the past or the future and just never in the moment. So they're missing the whole thing in a way. And so meditation tries to get you there, but if it's just isolated meditation, an hour of meditation, and then you run off running around like, unconscious, then I don't see the point of it. But and you shouldn't really do that to like you're going to get something out of it. And I see people doing this all the time, that if they meditate, they're going to be rich, or that it'll change their way they live or whatever. Maybe that's true. But mainly meditation, the whole point of it is simply to be in the moment, in the present moment. When it's over, it's over. If you stop meditating and then sort of start worrying about the future or whatever, then you've lost it. So that's meditation, and you don't need, you can be this, you can meditate anywhere and just be in the moment and really listen to things, really notice things, really look at things. And the worst thing is this, the cell phone, smartphones, just constantly looking at a smartphone. What you're doing is you're looking at a little computer all the time to distract your mind from the present moment. I mean, people are becoming, I use the computer a lot too. Not really cell phones. If I'm out, I don't want to look at a little computer that's, I am on the internet with my home computer a lot, but that's part of my work and things. But as Elon Musk said, we are like cyborgs already with these cell phones and stuff. But I'm not saying it's bad, really. Human beings are tool makers. It's just another tool. But don't let it take you over. And then, so to mention the Bhagavad Gita, great book from India. And you've heard this term, karma yoga. Now that's a way of, and that's a good thing to practice and remember this, is that it's about being grounded in the moment, present moment, and taking action. So it's about living consciously. And Gandhi liked that, was his favorite part of the Bhagavad Gita. And you can see this. So as you study these philosophies, you see the same things coming up. And so in Christian terms, it's the live in the world, not of it. And in the Hindu, it's karma yoga. And it's in Buddhism and probably everything else. So that's just I love that Alan Watts, I mean, if you want to know about meditation, he's the great teacher of it, I can tell you that. So that's meditation, and obviously it can be very helpful. So on the final, now to end this talk on spiritual practices, and I've talked about it a little bit, this I think is one of the most important things, is living in the present moment. And we know our friend Eckhart Tolle, his book, The Power of Now, and that is the foundation of his teaching. And it's a beautiful teaching. And so there's this idea of to eliminate time from your life. Now, what does that mean? And now you've heard this term enlightenment. and everybody's, I mean, even people that have studied spirituality and so much, and that's it. And I know friends, and they're still trying to get to enlightenment. And so, what is enlightenment? And I think you can follow the masters, listen to them, and really what you will find that term is a big thing, basically just for knowing that all there is now, is the being in the moment consciously and really understanding that that's the way it will always be, no matter what. Because we think we're going to go on a vacation and it's going to be different. If we get this, we'll be happy, this job, this girlfriend, boyfriend. And there's nothing wrong with working towards things, but it's always in the future is the payoff. But that's really what it is. Enlightenment is knowing that this is it. And to really groove in the present moment. Now, another thing I wanted to mention is this thing, maybe you've heard, it's called Satori. And it is like a flash of enlightenment. So it can happen to, that's what everybody's trying to get to. And if you try to get it, you can't get it in a way. But it can happen to people, it's happened to a lot of these masters, Eckhart Tolle, these people, where it's just abruptly something changes in you, and you have it really changes you. In Christian terms, you would be saved. I think that's what that is. But I think it's followed by extreme suffering. So if you're suffering and from the human condition, and it gets really bad, and there's a saying that the teacher will, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, but somehow you will be, and this thing can, just the realization of that all there is the moment is now, and and also at the same time you recognize that the ego dies. And if these things happen at the same time, a person can be completely transformed. But it doesn't happen very often to people, and it's usually, and I don't know, I wouldn't. It can be unbalancing for a while, but it's a beautiful experience, because you know that you are one with everything, and it's an experience that you never are afraid anymore of death. Nothing will be fearful anymore, because it's so powerful, and you just know that there's no reason to be afraid of anything, no matter what happens. But that's usually a very dramatic thing, and it doesn't last. It fades, and then your friend, the ego, comes back. And so it's always, the ego is always coming in the back door. So it's a daily thing to deal with it. But that's kind of... So I hope, I just think that in the world now, and the state of human development and where we're at, that I think these and their old techniques, they still hold true, and they're the best way of dealing with our short stay on Earth and as a human being. And it's a sad thing to see people that are miserable and suffering in the world, especially over things that that are illusions. And I think I think I'm going to wrap it up there. And I hope it's been helpful to you. So next shows, we will go back down to earth in a way and start looking at some of the science of climate change and other issues in a more balanced way. I'm going to try to, like, the most important things. Obviously, you can't talk about scientific papers in depth, but I hope that the channel will help many people understand climate change and in a rational, balanced way, instead of this polarized way that I see it. And so thanks for joining me. I hope it's been of help to you. And I thank you for joining me. And I'll see you next time. Bye.